everybody who watched Yellowstone, the show that made such a splash, one of the undercurrents of that was this kind of continual disdain, animus, tension with the federal government as having any role in any of this. That the idea of like all those suits in Washington trying to tell us what to do. And yes, underneath that, you have another cynical layer, which is let's use Washington to exploit as much resources for as little cost as possible, right? So it's not a simple binary feds get out. You had the whole, again, very resonant if you're in the West issue of Ruby Ridge a bunch of years ago, which if you were a New Yorker or someone living in Los Angeles seemed kind of this weird fight in distant lands between people fighting about things you didn't really understand. But it is part of that tension of the federal government and is a illegitimate interlocutor in what should be our land, the people's land, the free West. And the BLM also sits in a weird relationship to that. So talk about that a little on that tension.
Yeah, I think that brings to mind a couple of things. One is, yes, the Department of the Interior and the BLM, kind of their headquarters is in DC. But as someone who's traveled across the West interviewing BLM employees and land managers and rangers and recreation planners at the BLM, these are actually people that live in the West. Like the headquarters might be in DC, but the people actually making land management decisions and resource management plans that affect us all in terms of recreation and access, these are people that live in these communities in the West, whether it's Nevada, Idaho, Montana, California. I think that argument that DC should kind of stay out of our lands doesn't make any sense when you actually think about the people that are actually making all these decisions, because almost uniformly, they're the ones that actually live in these places. And so for the folks that wish that these lands would be perhaps privatized, they want to buy some of these lands, or they want, there's a big push to transfer the BLM lands that are in each state to the actual states themselves because they think the states can manage the lands better than the federal government. Again, the argument there doesn't hold up just because the people that are making those decisions actually live in the states, even though they work for the federal government. And two, as we've seen historically, lands that are given to the states are inevitably sold off as soon as those states have come up with a budget crisis. I think in Nevada is an extreme example of this, but I think 97% of the Nevada state lands that were given to the state by the federal government on statehood have been sold off. And so for people that think, oh, let's transfer them to the state can manage it better, they know these lands better. I mean, temporarily it might make sense, but long term, as soon as these states face budget deficits, they sell them off, and then those lands are not in any of our hands. These are shared collectively by all of us, and now they're owned by railroads, land barons, developers, people that can afford to buy large chunks of land in the West. And so, yeah, I've never really understood those arguments of keep DC out of the West because the people that are making the decisions don't live in DC. They primarily live here.